Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal. The Miami Hurricanes continue to do work in the 2025 class, landing back-to-back offensive line commitments. This one coming from three-star offensive lineman Jaden Wilkerson from the state of Florida. And I think what stands out to me about Jaden Wilkerson, and you're going to get some people in the comment section and on Twitter maybe clowning Miami for getting another three-star offensive lineman. Two things to note. One, Jaden Wilkerson is a high upside offensive line prospect. He's not necessarily the best football player right now going into his senior year, but you start taking a look at the traits. 6'6", 330 pounds. These kind of frames and bodies don't necessarily grow on trees. And we've seen Mario Cristobal in this Miami Hurricanes program have a lot of success with these kind of offensive linemen that, again, have all those physical traits that you are looking for, just need to get developed into better football players. Kind of reminds me of another three-star offensive lineman coming out in the 2022 class and former three-star offensive lineman Inez Cooper. We all know how he's blossomed with this Miami Hurricanes program. If you're a Miami fan, you kind of hope a very similar trajectory is going to take place with a guy in Jaden Wilkerson, who again has really all of those elite traits that you're looking for in an offensive lineman coming from the high school ranks. Want to get into Jaden Wilkerson, dive into the film, talk about what he brings to this Hurricanes program. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Miami Hurricane fans. You all know I love talking this program on the recruiting trail. The amount of support you guys continue to show to the fellas, it truly does mean a lot. I want to say sorry to the Hurricane fans. I was not available last night to talk about Demetrius Campbell committing to Miami. I was at a dinner and I was kind of saying, hey, can I get out of this dinner? I don't like missing Miami Hurricane commitments. Unfortunately, that was not a valid excuse. Had to stay at the dinner, so I'm sorry we didn't get to cover that. We'll talk about Demetrius Campbell as well in this episode. And without further ado, let's get into Jaden Wilkerson. And another thing that I was kind of talking about, this is before we get into Jaden Wilkerson, is you look at the state of Florida in the offensive line class in 2025, it's a weak class in the state of Florida this cycle for offensive linemen. You take a look at the rankings, there's only two offensive linemen that are in the top 300 nationally in the state of Florida. So you look at what Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal are doing on this offensive line. They're saying, hey, there's not many bona fide studs on the offensive line in this 2025 cycle. Let's go take some lottery tickets on some really high upside offensive linemen that are kind of flying under the radar in the state of Florida. I think Jaden Wilkerson kind of certainly resembles that kind of take for this Hurricanes program. Again, a guy that needs to get into this program, get coached up a little bit more, but there's a lot of things that you like about Jaden Wilkerson, starting with the frame, right? 6'6", 330. You dive into the film for Jaden Wilkerson and there's flashes, right? As you work through the film, you see some things you like, you see some things that you don't like, but a lot of the things that you see that you don't like are teachable stuff, right? You can't teach a guy to get to 6'6", 330 pounds, but you can teach him how to use his feet, how to use his hand, how to get off the line of scrimmage. But there are certain things that you can't really teach. And I think one of the things is just the raw power that this guy has. I mean, you see just the physically imposing frame that Jaden Wilkerson has at 6'6", 330, kind of lining up at that left tackle spot. And you see the power. This is a guy that, yeah, he's playing a little high right now. No doubt that'll get cleaned up, but he is absolutely ragdolling that poor kid. I mean, he is a grown man with the ideal frames that you want. And you work through the film and say, all right, there are some consistency stuff that you want to see him clean up right here. I mean, the first step is just not attacking the line of scrimmage, kind of catching, if you will, on the offensive line, not something you want to do. But again, he has that big frame to more than make up for it. And you see when he's engaged, that's probably when he's at his best. A guy that I think certainly could kick in and play that guard spot, very similar to Inez Cooper, because the bright spots on Jaden Wilkerson's film is when he's engaged. When he's a guy that has hands on opposing defensive linemen, he can do whatever he wants with defensive linemen. Again, a guy that certainly needs some work, but there are a lot of things on the film that you really like. And I think the one thing is just how physically imposing he is. Like when he is engaged with opposing defensive linemen, he is normally just doing whatever he wants with these guys, working up to the second level, things that you really like for Jaden Wilkerson. Got to clean up the footwork. He's got a little nasty in him. And You look at Miami in the 2025 class and say, all right, it's a slow start, but the Hurricane fans that follow this Hurricanes program on the recruiting trail, I think we all know that it's going to be a busy next couple of weeks. We've seen some of the tweets. We've seen the Cristobal's coming in. It is a late start for Miami. I would remind a lot of Miami fans that last cycle was a late start as well. You fast forward to December, Mario Cristobal, one of the best closers on the recruiting trail that you see in the country, and you start scrolling down specifically with this offensive line class. It goes back to, what we just talked about. Not a lot of elite offensive linemen in this 2025 cycle in the state of Florida. So what is Miami doing on the recruiting trail specifically with the offensive line? They're just going out and getting some guys that have some big time upside. We already talked about Kalen Mooks. And then you look at Demetrius Campbell and say, that's an elite athlete for 6'6", 300. I mean, you don't see many offensive tackles move the way he does. Now, does he need to work on the physicality of his game? Yeah, he absolutely does. That can kind of get fixed. You get him in the weight room. You put some more muscle on him. You teach him a little bit more of that physicality, but what you can't teach is the 6'6", 300-pound frame that he has and the athleticism that comes with that frame. So I think on the surface, I can see people being critical of what Miami's doing on the offensive line in this 2025 cycle. But when you dive into the landscape of what this recruiting cycle looks like, specifically in the state of Florida, I think this makes a lot of sense. And I think you got 3 offensive linemen committed now with Demetrius Campbell and Kalen that I can't wait to see what they are going into year 3 with this Hurricanes program. And Mario Cristobal is going to continue to build this program through the line of scrimmage. We'll close it on that. Another very interesting cat for this Hurricanes program. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.